So, setting up your meeting for Facebook Live.
It is now streaming.
Oh, really?
It says meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Okay. Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited today to have this wonderful, amazing, world-renowned singer, jazz singer, Jay Clayton with us today in our Wednesday Wisdom. Well, it's not Wednesday, we changed it to Thursday today, our Thursday Wisdom interview series. And I have a little bit of information about you, Jay.
All right.
And I'm going to, first of all, I want to welcome you. Welcome you.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I'm in Germany, okay?
Yeah, you are in Germany.
And you're in New Paltz.
Okay. Okay. Welcome everyone who is listening. This is Judy Rafat, jazz singer and vocal coach, and I am welcoming you all today here on this interview with Jay Clayton from New York, from New Paltz, she just told me. And Jay is an internationally acclaimed vocalist, a composer, and an educator whose work boldly spans the terrain between jazz and new music. Oh, that's interesting. Jay has gained worldwide attention as both a performer and teacher, with more than 40 recordings. Oh, you're going to have to tell me about that, Jay. 40 recordings to her credit, Clayton has appeared alongside such formidable artists as Muha Richard Abrams, Steve Reich, he sounds like he's German, Kirk Newrock, Julian Priester, Jerry Granelli, Jane Ira Bloom, Gary Bartz, Jack Wilkins, George Cables, Fred Hirsch, I heard him play the other day, marvelous, and Gary Thomas. So that's just a little tiny, we say in German, Einblick, a little bit of blick, a little bit of peek into your amazing, massive career as a jazz singer. Just let me check and see if we're live in the group at Jay. So, okay. One sing. Not yet. I have to go back, and you always have to refresh, you know what I mean? And sometimes it just takes a little time. We're still not live here in the group. So I'm going to go back here. So refresh. Okay. Well, we're still not in the group.
That's funny. It says live on my screen.
Yeah, we are live, but sometimes it just takes ages for it to show up in Facebook.
Get up on Facebook. Oh.
Yeah. So we'll just leave it here for now. And if if anybody is online, we will. Isn't that stupid? Okay, I'm going to try it once more. Abbrechen. Okay. So we're still not live in my group. So I hope Facebook shows us up, because do you have a mobile phone with you there? Can you look?
I do.
Okay. Would you look in and see if Vocal Transformation Academy?
How do you know what you mean?
It's in my group. We're going live in my group.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you are in my group. Can you? Vocal Transformation Academy, you don't know my group, right?
No, I don't know what
okay, all right. That's where we're going live in right now. And I'm just going to everybody, just 1 second of patience here. We do want to see if anybody's listening, right? Because I have like 1,200 people here in this group. And And so it would be kind of nice to have an audience, right?
Yeah. I did share it on Facebook, but
Yeah, I've been sharing it all afternoon, writing wonderful things about you and sending it all over the place in Instagram, in LinkedIn, and all over my platforms. So, and we've also been sharing it all week. So, 1 second. This is all right. Come on, Facebook, do your thing. Do your thing. So, siehst du? Now we're live. I can see us.
You see us on Facebook? Is that what you?
Yeah, but it looks like. So, oh, there we go. Okay, we're live. Vernum Isaac, you live in the group. Thank you, Vernum. Okay, we'll just go on and continue and see who else is joining us. We're still in good time. So, Jay, tell us a little bit about your background. I know it's just so massive. It's just so an amazing.
Well, it's long. It's long, but and of course, I don't know if you know Eva Simontacci. She's an Italian singer in Milano, and she's been doing. I've known her a very long time. I just was going to mention her because several years ago, when I was in Italy, she kept wanting to interview me. So finally, we sat. We sat in someone's living room, and she said, "Is this a good time?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "Well, how did it all start?" And I talked for 1 hour.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
Like it just happened to be that I could do it. I mean, interviews are funny, and she transcribed the whole thing. So if there's anybody who's interested, it's on my website under bios. It's this long. She translated that whole thing into Italian, and anyway. Just so you know, if I started to tell the whole thing, but I will tell as brief as I can. Because
sort of the most important things that you can see in your career as major episodes.
Well, it started because I think there's a book in this. I don't think that someone's written it yet about how did you first meet jazz.
Yeah, it's one of the questions.
Yeah, it's like I'm always curious of the instrumentalist, and then the next question is for them is why that instrument, But anyway, for me, it was like I was born in 41, so in the 40s, my mother used to sing the standards around the house, but I didn't know that was jazz or jazz standards. Neither did she, because it was pop music in the 30s, So.
Yeah.
So
where were you born? Where?
Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from Youngstown, Ohio, and I was always musical. I mean, I sang in the little choirs and triple trios, and I took piano lessons like everybody else did. Even though I didn't practice that much, but I was pretty good at it, and only to say I'll come back to that because I always do talk to singers about if you can take piano. I mean, that just covers the whole thing, if possible. And it was classical, everything classical. And I listened to Frank Sinatra. So my first repertoire came from Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. When I heard Frank Sinatra for the first time, my grandfather loved to sing, and he took me on his knee when I was 3 years old and sang me all the songs of Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, who else? All these other guys at that time.
Right.
So I got sung all of these standards when I was 3 years old. So
for like you, like me, and so in other words, my first repertoire. I mean, I know trillions of tunes, but then I always talk to everybody about what are yours. Which tunes do you resonate with? But a lot of them came from Frank Sinatra, the first batch of them, And but I didn't really know about, it's not like there was a lot of jazz around, but and I've talked about this in a couple of interviews and I talk about in my teaching that there are no accidents. There's one thing leads to another, and what happened?
One thing. leads to another.
It's so
Yeah.
true. It's so true. In other
Yeah.
words, and the only common denominator is you seeking. Once you get obsessed with something, you find it. And so, when I was probably a senior in high school. I had a cousin who was a year older than me, and he did play piano. For some reason, I never asked him exactly how he discovered it, but he gave me three records. And it's so funny I mean, that's a long time ago, and when I talk about it, I can see the front door of his house as I was leaving it, and he's handing me these records, and it was Miles Davis, Ramsey Lewis, and Dave Brubeck. That's all I remember.
Wow.
And I played those, and I had no I said, what is that? It just was so right to me. So it was jazz. So I said, how can I get more of this? So I joined Columbia Records, was a record club. And if you, for a penny, if you join, every month they send you a record. Then you have to
Oh,
start.
yeah.
Of course, you have to start paying after that. But you could hit a topic, and I checked off jazz. So only
Yeah.
that was my beginning listening experience.
Hmm.
But just like you, I heard a lot of those tunes, the standards. I didn't
Yeah.
know they were standards, and later on, I didn't. I hardly had to even learn them if I decided to do it because it was already in my ear. So
Yeah.
anyway, I was on a mission then, and just a short story long. Nobody, people didn't go to college so much in those days, but I did, and I didn't know what it was. In other words, somebody came to our high school. They come and they want you to go to the college, and I knew if I did
Hmm.
go to college, it would have to be in Ohio because it was very cheap. My parents didn't
Hmm.
have money. And she was a representative of Miami University, which is in Oxford, Ohio. And a girlfriend and I, we said, let's go. So we applied, we got in, and then she bailed out. So I went
Oh,
all by myself to this college.
okay.
You know what I'm saying? And which is unheard of because I was very quiet and shy. I talk a lot now, but I was, but I was, I wasn't like I was a go-getter, but it just seemed right to me. And it
Yeah.
would be a way to get out of that small
It
town.
was sort of God's will kind of thing, right?
It is, yeah. It's like there's a reason because I didn't know why, but I knew I had to go. I was going to go someplace, and
Yeah.
nobody went any place. I'm from a big Italian family, second generation,
Okay.
and everybody stayed. You get married and you stay.
Yeah.
And so I went, and again, and I'll just go on campus. Of course, there was no jazz education. But
Mm.
there was classical music, and I didn't know you could major in music. So they put me in elementary education because they figured you weren't going to graduate anyway. The girls.
Yeah, right. They're just going to get married and have kids
That's right.
like it's supposed to be, and you cook and you take care of the family.
That's right. And the things are so different now, and I'm so happy. But anyway, but I had a roommate who was a classical vocal major, and I used to sing around the dorm. Don't ask. I was driven. A cappella. Lover, la, da, da, or funny, like while we were doing the laundry or at a little dorm meeting.
Yeah.
Anyway, she said, "What, seems like you ought to follow jazz. I mean, sounds like you're really interested." And there was a trombonist on campus who had been in the service, so he really knew jazz. He was doing gigs already. She said, "Sing for John Watson. He'll tell you. He'll tell you if you can sing." And
Okay.
so I did, and he dug it. And the next thing I knew, he called me for a gig. It's funny. I just showed this to my daughter. I'm going through a lot of stuff archiving. It's going to
Hmm.
take me forever. I do it every few years, and then I give up because there's all these photos and stuff. And I came upon my senior year in college. I had a professor who made us do an autobiography at 21. Just write something about yourself, and that's where I talked about what I'm telling you about how I discovered jazz, and I sang for John Watson and was like all excited. Is he going to call? He said, "Well, yeah, you can sing." He said, "Next time I need a singer on a gig, I'll call you." And he did.
Mm. Wow. Wow. That's
Well,
great.
he did $10. They probably now it's up to 50, right? No, but all I'm saying is that it was like that's you have to be very trusting and follow what you love, because this is, I'm told, everybody has a story like this. Total
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Why did I go to that school?
Yeah. I think it's all kind of before, how do you say this in English? It's all in the plan.
Well, whatever. Yeah, if you pay attention, yeah, if you
Right?
and you have an intention to do it, and you, so there was, so guess what? So of course, I would do it on the weekends, and I'd sing my three tunes. They'd play, and then I'd sing my three tunes. And
Mm-hmm.
but and later on, toward the end of that few years, that got old. I wanted to be more part of the group, but in retrospect, wow, was I learning?
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
sitting off the side, and and I'm getting repertoire, and I'm just standing and listening to the improv. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
very lucky, and then we would go. These guys turned me on to jazz. The instrumentalists. There was a classical bassist who I'm still in touch with, who
Mm-hmm.
played great jazz piano,
Mm.
Alan Goldman, and then John played trombone, and we had, it was great. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
one summer before the last year of college, we went to New York, and
Mm-hmm.
I heard this is another one. I don't know if it's in there. And Steve Lacy, who is a mentor of mine now,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, I
didn't
was
know.
going to ask you, who's your greatest influences?
Well, the influences are all like Ornette and John Coltrane. Oh my God, well, to see, we're getting there now to New York. In other words, I went there for that summer, and Steve Lacy was playing all monk with Roswell Rudd, and I forget the other two. All monk, but it was so beautiful. He was so himself it was still pure monk. And then I got it. It was like, you know what? I got to go move to New York. And people will tell you, you have to go where the music is. But it is
Yeah.
everywhere. But there's jazz everywhere. So I'm not saying that you have to go to New York. I mean, I think New York is still the place
Yeah.
where the place.
I felt really moved to move to New York way back um, when I had done a tribute to Dizzy Gillespie album with Kenny Barron and Rufus Reed and Paquito Rivera and Ignacio Baroa, all these wonderful guys. And then I felt, you know what? I have to go to New York.
When
But
was this? When was this
I
about?
did the album in 1998, and I got to perform a couple of the tunes at Dizzy's 80th birthday celebration in Inglewood, and all of the guys were there. They were all there. It was amazing. And then I thought, you know what? I've got, all of these wonderful contacts. Slide Hampton wrote a beautiful, what do you call it, thing in my album, a nice testimonial, I guess you would call it.
Hmm.
And I had all these wonderful contacts, but you know what? I had a 14-year-old boy, and I went there for a couple of months to New York, and I had already a place to live with somebody down in Manhattan. And
Great. That's the hard
yeah,
part.
yeah, and then I just started thinking about my son, and he was at home, and I thought, no, what happens, Judy Rafat, at the end of your life if you have gone, you've gone for, this is the right thing maybe to live in New York, but you don't have the connection to your son. Well, how are you going to feel after that? And I thought, you know what? I decided myself for my boy, and so I went back to Germany, and I just, was doing my.
But you're Canadian, so you went young to Germany, right?
Oh yeah, I just finished university. I studied classical voice at the University of Western Ontario in London. And after my studies, I went on a tour of with a rock group, and I was this. I also majored in flute and voice. And so here was this classical singer with a classical flute playing background in this rock group. And we traveled all over, we toured all over Europe. And then I met my husband at that time, and I ended up staying in Germany. That's how I ended up staying in
Yeah.
Germany.
With your son, who was, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so I went back because of my son, and I said, okay, if this is God's will, if this is meant to be, if this is in the plan, then, this will happen, and that you will be able to, pursue your career. And so I've been, very active here in Germany, traveling and performing all over in jazz festivals and jazz clubs and
oh,
everywhere,
no,
and
no.
universities. I think it would have probably had been a better thing for me to stay in New York, because I had all these contacts at that time, with Rufus Reed and Paquito, and they were all, because I got to meet Dizzy Gillespie when I was, before I even really got into jazz. That was 1986, when I was a peace singer. I was the peace singer of Germany, like more Joan Baez kind of thing. So I was doing a lot of protest songs and songs for peace, and let's get away from all of this armament. We're going to have disarmament, and we want to have peace in the world. And that's what I was doing. And then I was organizing a concert for the Year of Peace in 1986. And we wanted to earn money for the Third World with Willy Brandt, who was here, the Chancellor of Germany. And he said, and he had a fund called Development and Freedom for the Third World. And so I thought to myself, okay, we need to have somebody who could, his main, how would you call that in English? The main performer, the head performer of a concert. And so I got in touch with Dizzy, and it was love at first sight, just on the phone. I could notice it. And then I went to New York and met him. And we were friends. He was my mentor for the rest of his days, and I was on tour with him, and it was just amazing. So I got to meet all of these musicians at that time,
Yeah,
and
sounds great. The best, yeah.
and that's why I got to record this CD in New York, in NOLA Studios in New York. This tribute to Dizzy Gillespie called Con Alma. And so, I should have gone to New York probably, but I didn't. So
No,
I decided,
there are no shoulda, woulda. You just, everybody has a path, and there's jazz everywhere. I'm just saying, for me, I knew I had to go there, but I have a little Dizzy Gillespie story. My Dizzy Gillespie story. I did meet him, but is that getting back to Steve Lacy, that group was so good. And then once I decided to move to New York, I didn't know anybody, but I moved.
Really courageous, and
I'm
especially at that
talking about
time.
courageous, And I met one of the classical singers had an apartment in 58th Street, and somehow I had one friend from high school who I could stay with for 2 weeks. I mean, in retrospect, you're absolutely right. That's a lot of courage, but the courage slash obsession with the music, love for the
Yeah,
music. That's what you
that's
follow.
it.
But
Once you start singing jazz, you get obsessed. It becomes like an obsession, almost an addiction. You gotta do it,
what a
right?
wonderful addiction. So,
Yeah.
but the short story is that when I got there, I didn't know anybody, and of course I knew it. Monk was playing at the five spot. Coltrane was playing at the half note. Miles was playing at the. I mean, these guys were all playing. It was like going to a candy store. Charles
Wow.
Mingus. I mean, Eric Dolphy. I even heard. But anyway, just before that,
Charlie Parker too, probably.
I didn't. I missed Charlie Parker because I moved there in '63.
Oh,
And
okay.
he had already died.
Can
And
you just wait one
holiday,
second? One
yeah.
second. I just have to get my cable from my phone because it just sort of died. 1 second.
Okay. Okay, you got it. I'll hold off on my Steve Lacy, Dizzy Gillespie story. Well, I'm lucky. I'm talking to somebody, I guess. I'm lucky. I heard
So,
everybody.
so, 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 so.
I was just telling whoever, I don't
Electricity.
know. I don't know who
One
I'm talking
second.
to, but I was
Just a moment.
telling him I'm very
And
lucky.
that's going in here.
I'm lucky
So,
to have heard
putting
these.
on my earphones again. So, so sorry about that, but my phone just lost all of its juice.
Forever are we never, I say, well, I used to say never am I not shopping. I like shopping. But I say never are we not charging something, right? There's
Yeah.
always something to charge up. But anyway, I was saying is that one thing leads to another. And when I went to these clubs, but I was shy, and of course you get hit on, and I didn't really have anybody to hang with. But before I moved to New York, I waited tables on the Jersey Shore. Just the year.
Oh, wow.
I went right, and I was in a band. You see, in my college band, we got a gig, and I would wait tables till 10 o'clock, and then I would sing. This was in the Thousand Islands on the Russian River in a steakhouse.
Wow.
And then that's when I knew. I said, no, I'm either going to go to California or New York City, and I was right. So, but before I moved to New York City, I got a couple of people we wanted to take a little trip into New York. It was just in Jersey. We weren't far, the city. And I begged them, please, let's go to Birdland, the old Birdland, the original Birdland in the 50s. And Dizzy Gillespie was playing there. I begged because these guys, they weren't into jazz, but they came with me. And so he was one of the first live, jazz that I heard from after college. Although, no, that's not true. When I was in college, we went to Cincinnati to hear Coltrane. So it means I had to leave, and I was in a dorm with ours. So if they had had a fire drill or something, I wouldn't have shown up because I went down to Cincinnati. But anyway, that was so cool, and he was very cool. He told me I had impeccable taste. I think he was hitting on me, but in a very sweet way. In a very sweet way. So I was at that Birdland, So,
Wow.
so those are really, when you say what your influences. I was hearing all that stuff live, So then I finally, so I moved to New York, and this is I think I must have told her that. Here, you want to hear some nerve? I looked up Steve Lacy in the phone book.
Oh my gosh.
And had the audacity to call him. I was just because I knew where to go for the major players, but I wanted someone to help me find players that were more, my age, and where I could have sessions and go hear it. And, he gave me the time of day. He's left us a few years ago, and I really, he's a true blue. He was one of the true blue, and he just gave me the time of day, and eventually I went to hear him play, and he would help me go to when you go to the 5 spot. It was expensive, but he knew a place where the jazz musicians could stand, and not have to play all the things. So, but guess what? Then he went to Paris. He moved. A lot of the jazz players, I almost did. Left to Europe because that's where you were appreciated.
Yeah. Dee Dee Bridgewater went to Paris too.
That's right. They were expatriate. They just went.
I remember her story where she didn't feel appreciated in the United States.
Right, and she was there a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she did play, and they did. But so I had a couple of years where we could hang, a little bit. But anyway, his bass player fell madly in love with me.
About that.
No, I'm only going to tell you this because I wasn't into it, but he was nice. He was great, and he recommended me for a gig. It was against. Remember, this is in the '60s now, and they had just started to play free music.
Okay.
And I happened to be there, and Steve Lacy was one of them.
Okay.
That would, forget about chord changes and blah blah blah. But I went to hear him, and anyway, the bass player who also left us, Louis Worrell, bless him, he played in a band with some free players, Mark Levin, who's now in Copenhagen. See, they leave,
Yeah.
But anyway, they were doing a benefit concert against the war in Vietnam. And they wanted it. There was a trio. There was their great group, which was playing free jazz. Then there was a little trio, and they wanted a singer to go with the trio, and he recommended me. I'm just saying, how cool was that? And which I later ended up playing with that band that he was playing with. because it was
Mm.
free. In other words, everything leads to something else. So I started go to sessions with these. The piano player had a place on the Lower East Side, and they invited me for the sessions. I mean, just in this little apartment, just singing tunes, and I ended up marrying the drummer.
Oh, cool.
That's where I got my name, Frank Clayton. We're no longer together, but we have
Okay.
two beautiful kids by him, you'll see. And so again, one thing leads to another. But
Yeah.
now I had people who we could just hang and jam, and I could learn stuff. And then and the other and then I have a Mingus story too.
Just one thing, one second. I've got to greet the people that are here in our group. Vernon, how are you? Douglas Richardson, he's from New York. He's a drummer from New York.
Great.
Lisa Naparella is a student of mine. Bijan is my son.
Oh,
Nice to see him too. So, yeah, just wanted
great.
to say hello to
Yeah.
the.
No. Well, anyway, the point is that I was but I decided I had a loft. That's a whole other story. I was one of the first people in the lofts. I discovered it because I was doing office temps, and there was a painter. She was also doing office temps. In other words, to make a living, I didn't want to get a real job, so I did office temps. And she invited me to her loft for dinner, and it's only 1,000 square feet, but it was like only four lofts in this building. This is before Soho.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked and I said, gee, I said, this would be a great place to live because you could play music late at night, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And sure enough, coincidence? I don't think so. A couple of weeks later, she called me. She said, there's a loft available, $80 a month.
Oh my gosh.
But it's, it doesn't have heat, but it's like blah, 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 blah. So I'm just saying one thing leads to another. Next thing I'm living in this loft where I can have sessions, you see.
Yeah,
And I
cool.
did. And I did. And I even started doing concerts in this lab. It's interesting because I just perused your questions, and I'm sure I'm going to answer all of them without even you asking, because they're all pertinent about how do you go from one thing to the other. But it's this whole notion of, so how do you get a gig? I mean, in other words, truthfully learn on gigs still to this day.
Mm-hmm.
To this day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
There's,
know what's happening in that moment, except that now I've been doing it a long time, so I have more
yeah.
trust and I go for it. But and so nobody was going to hire me. I mean, I was Jay Collintone, by the way, at the time, and I didn't have so I started presenting concerts, and that I had my kids in the early '70s. This was in the '70s. My kids were born in '71 and '72, so I still. I often think of the other singer that, I started to sing free at that time too, because I would have free sessions. I would have
Mm-hmm.
standards, but then we would have a free horn players.
Which do you like to sing the best? The standards or the free
Both,
stuff? Or
both.
both?
See,
Both.
see, I can't if you ever hear a whole set of me, you're going to hear both.
Oh,
And
okay.
oh, absolutely. For even my
Okay.
CDs, if you hear, even my CDs. Although the last two, I have two new CDs out. I don't think I should have. I have links I could send you
Yeah, absolutely.
for
Please,
your listening pleasure.
yeah, afterwards, please put the links here in the group too. You'll have to
Well,
join,
one of them's not released yet, so I'm not going to, get
but
them.
it'd be nice for everybody to listen and
Yeah,
get
yeah,
to
you
know
would
your
hear.
music, right?
In other words, one came out in January, and it's just me and a drummer. And that's
Okay.
another whole story. That's another. How did I meet him? I mean, again, I could go on and on and on. But I think the significant thing is that one musical experience led to another thing, and there I was in New York City. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I said I'm going to Europe. I can't get a gig here. I did the same thing as everybody else, and I said the only thing that's going to keep me here is a gig. And
Hmm.
I saved my money and I sublet my loft.
Oh my gosh, you are so courageous, girl.
Imagine I didn't even know where I was going. I just decided I was going. I sublet that loft.
Yeah, but that's the way the universe works,
Yeah,
Jay.
yes. Fortunately, I only sublet it for 6 months. And so what happened was I moved in before I went to Europe. I moved in with a friend on in the village. She had was cold water flats, and one day, somebody that lived in the building said, "You know, they're looking for music around the corner at this bar, called Pookie's Pub." Now they didn't even care what kind of music, so I went there and got that gig with the piano player I had just met, and with the bass player. They couldn't have drums because of the cabaret laws. So the drummer who I later married, he used to come at the end of he'd have on his back a little snare drum and sit in. So I had that. But that was every week.
Wow.
That was every week. So even we made $75 for the whole band for 2 nights.
My gosh.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
But
Well,
still,
that's what they tell us in the beginning. If you want to earn money, you don't become a jazz musician. So this is when people come to me, students, and I say to them, I said, well, it's not easy. Like if you're going to stay in the business, like, I've been in the business for 35, 40 years. People that stay in the business, you've got to be really, what's the right word? You have to be, you have to be prepared for everything. And either your mission to sing jazz is so great to overcome every obstacle in your way, or at some point you're going to give it up and say, you know what, I'm going to get a normal job and I can do this on the side. And I had a job in a school once when I thought, okay, I think I need to earn a little more money just to be more secure. And I was in that school maybe 2.5 years, 3 years. And I said, you know what, Nay, I gotta go. I gotta sing my jazz. And I had this full-time job that was, guaranteed to when I was 65 with all benefits and summer holidays and everything. I said, no, I'm going. And all my colleagues couldn't believe it. Said, in your age, what happens if you get sick? And I said, well, that's the way it is. I have to go. And I put this really fantastic job, teaching music. I said, I gotta go. And I how do you say? I canceled my job, or whatever you call it. I went away. And 3 months later, I was in Singapore with a 6-month singing gig. And I thought to myself, there you go. Once you take action as either it's a musician, or even if you take action with something else, once you take action, you take that first step. You took that first step and you got in touch with this person, and then you had the courage to go and get that loft in that place where you weren't imagining to get it, and all of a sudden opportunities open for you once you take the first step, right? And I think that's the way the universe
it's right
works.
for you, it's going to lead to something else, and it did. Little by little. So anyway, with this Pookie's Pub, every weekend, you know how many tunes you get to know, and you get so much better. That's why, and we will we'll make a transition here at some point. But it's like Sheila and I both have always, she's a decade older than me, but why we are so close, I think, is because we have a lot of the same beliefs, and we have a lot of the same history, believe it or not. And one of them is, well, you support your art. You have to. You're not going to make money at it for a long time. I mean, I'm still. If I wasn't for my teaching, it's like, I figure maybe when I'm 90, But anyway, so I decided I'd work. Do something. I didn't want to do something that I would take home. So I wasn't quite ready to teach. Of course, obviously, I had a teaching degree. I could teach in high school, whatever. But I wasn't interested. So I decided to just do this office temp thing. And then when this gig came up every week, I didn't go to Europe. I bought a piano instead for my loft, and that's why I could
Well,
do concerts.
who knows? Maybe you will still be coming to Europe at some
But I
point. Is
did. No, I did. But later on. But I mean, at that point, I
Yeah,
didn't need to move there as such.
yeah.
Anyway, just another short story is when I was singing at Pookie's Pub one night, Charles Mingus walked in. See, this was a little teeny skinny bar, a block away from the half note where John Coltrane was playing.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
probably Mingus was, and it was around the time of Cambodia, that whole thing. And
Hmm.
he walked by this bar and he saw the bass in there. You know, that we were on a break, but he saw the bass in this little bar, Pookie's Pub, and he walked in and he sat at the bar. I thought I would die. Can you imagine, Charles Mingus? And he was talking to the owners, who were kind of, never mind. I won't even go into that. But, and he said, because he was surprised there was jazz in this little bar, and it was just me, piano and bass. And apparently he told me he liked the way I did Lush Life. I don't know. But the point was, he said but nobody hardly was in there, because it's me, Jay Collintone. Who's she? But guess what? Every week in the Village Voice, Jay Collintone Trio. You know what I mean? My name was in
Yeah.
the Village
You
Voice.
were consistent.
But I mean, there's
Consistency.
something to that. I didn't put it in, but he did. So anyway, he looked at these guys, the owners, and he said, "You know what? I can put this place on the map." He said,
Oh.
So he agreed 2 weeks later to come play.
Oh my
Now,
gosh.
so 2 weeks, and I can't find this ad. I've been going through all my stuff, archives, and I know I found an ad for Slugs, which is another one of those ancient clubs from that time. I did play Slugs. I can't find this ad because it said Jay Clayton and Charles Mingus, no cover, no minimum. And
Wow.
so, in other words, he packed the place, of course. Now, he wasn't going to play like the whole gig. He played 2 tunes or something, but he
Yeah.
showed up. He showed up.
Yeah.
I have always and I wish, I think some people from NYU, some students, I swear I remember some students photograph, taking a video of that. And I don't, I really should
Yeah.
look, do some research about it at NYU. I think I need to call the video, see if they have archives.
Yeah.
Because I would
You
be.
know what, Jay, I'd like to come a little bit further to, I'd even like to hear more about, what were your most important CDs that you recorded and so on. But I would like to come to the part for the singers that are amongst us and people who are going to be watching this afterwards about what do you think necessary for a person to become a jazz singer? Do they have to know all the theory and the harmony? What do you think? What do you say to that?
Well, what I say, and again, I say a lot of this in my book. Here's what I say.
Oh yes, the book. I just got the book today, guys.
No, but here's what I say.
Sing your story. This
Yes,
is
there's my
from
book.
Jay Clayton, a practical guide for learning and teaching the art of jazz singing. And I'm so excited to have
No,
this
there's
book.
tips in there. Yeah, because in other words, my philosophy is this. Uh, if you can't, it has to do with the order of things. There's nothing wrong with theory, but if you haven't listened to the music, you don't know any songs, you don't understand counting off tempos, you don't understand the form of the tune, you can do all the scales and all the stuff you want. It is not going to help you. Okay, so it has to do with the balance of studying theory but the basics, what I call the nuts and bolts. I do a workshop, of course, now in New York, where I do nuts and bolts, I call it. I hire a piano player, we talk about all the possible, how do you start a tune? How do you put a head arrangement together without writing everything down on paper? I call it the nuts and bolts. Can you count off the tempo? Can you sing in time? So those things to me are more important at first. And all the listening that you do, and it's like, at the same time, if you want to study theory, because it won't make any sense to you if you do it first.
Exactly.
And
I'm writing all this down, by the way, every word you're saying here. But
no,
if it's in the book, then I will check
I'm
that.
sure there's stuff, but in other words, uh, there's a lot of singers who start to get, including Sheila Jordan, and she wouldn't mind my telling you this. She'll say, "Oh well, I don't know anything about theory." Okay, is she as an example? Is she a great jazz singer? Doesn't mean she doesn't want to, but at that time, she didn't take piano and everything. But that is not the priority. It's important. I know that I can comp. I did study theory and stuff. But the reason if I can sing, it's because of what I've listened to, and it's because I kept doing it. You
Yeah.
have to sing in front of people. It's so funny because just recently I made a little. It's kind of I call it a checklist. It's not in my book. It's about here's a jazz singer checklist, and the first thing I say is listen to jazz music, especially instrumental. And
Yeah.
I tell instrumentalists to listen to vocal music. You see?
Can I get that checklist from somewhere? Could you send that to
Oh
me?
yeah, absolutely. The
I would
second,
love to get that.
oh, no problem. The next thing it says, that's number one. Number two, learn songs one at a time. Memorize exclamation point. So I get a lot of singers come. They know a lot of tunes, but they don't know any of them really because they can't memorize. They're reading the
Didn't
words,
memorize them.
or they know a part of it. So get it down. It's hard. I have to practice what I preach. Don't be learning 10 or 15 tunes. Pick one
Exactly,
at a time.
exactly.
And people like us can lead you to what are the hip tunes, what are some good tunes. So, but learn them one at a time, but really learn them. We spoke earlier about sing the song without the lyrics, say the words without singing the song. Or I was
Yeah.
talking to somebody else about that. That's when you really know the tune. The more you know the tune, the more you can do with it intrinsically, intuitively, instead of some people make they make an arrangement of a tune they don't know, and only some instrumentalist does. And it's like they don't. How do you know which part you wanted? You don't even know the song, and you want to do it. So
Yeah.
you try it many ways,
Yeah.
and we try it many ways. So learn the song. Number three, develop/organize a personal repertoire book. That's one of my. I'm very organized. So what I do with anybody who works with me, they end up with okay. Instead of 50, 60 tunes that you sort of like, I want which ones really are meaningful.
Yeah.
This is in the book too. You'll see a
Okay.
repertoire sheet.
Yeah.
Everybody I work with has a repertoire sheet. This is how you keep track of your tunes. How many swing do you know? What
Yeah.
key are they in? How many ballads?
Absolutely.
How
I
many
do that
ba-
too with my students. And
Yeah.
I get them to prepare. If you want to perform somewhere, then let's get 10 tunes up where you have your charts and you have your keys,
In your
and
key, right?
right? And that's a big important, right? To
Well,
get
you know,
your key.
but talking about theory, let's back to theory. In my book, and of course, my book is 20 years old now.
Wow.
I talk about cassettes in my book. Nobody's going to know what that is. You know, I talk about cassettes. So this was 20. Yeah, it was in 2000 it came out. But I have in there what I call 7 steps to a transposed chart. In other words, especially then, everybody's doing it on computer now. I think it's your job to have a chart in your key,
Absolutely.
4-bar phrases, harmony, lyrics, and melody, not all over the place. Usually you can get it on one sheet, 32 bars.
Sure.
In your key. So in this book, you don't even have to know what a piano is. And I give an example of Autumn Leaves. One, if you follow every step, you can.
That's what I'm going to be doing in my 5-day challenge next week. Autumn Leaves.
You have
Just one.
Well, I use that a
tune.
lot in the improv, a lot. It's so harmonically
Oh.
friendly. Everybody has to work on it. As a matter of fact, I don't think I sent you any links. I make practice CDs. I
Oh,
sold them for you.
great.
They used to be cassettes. I finally have them on a link. I'm happy to give it to you. It has warm-ups,
Oh,
vocal warm-ups,
fantastic.
classical
Wow.
warm-ups. Then it has Now's the Time, which I sing the lyrics and sing the tune, and then there's a rhythm section, minus
Wow. Oh,
Autumn Leaves,
fantastic.
and Mr. PC. Because with those three, you can learn. That's what you want to keep working on your soloing on it. Anyway,
Yeah.
I say, have your own book and in order. And I give them numbers. I have a whole plan. But this but this transposing thing. Now, of course, you can pay somebody to make a chart for you, but I
Yeah.
suggest you do one anyway. Just
Yeah.
take one of your tunes, follow my 7 steps, and transpose your own chart.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can just, you do the chord changes first. So maybe that's what you want. But I like the whole thing because instrumentalists have a lot more respect when you walk in there with it.
Absolutely. That's
Even
what I tell my singers. If you know your key, you go to a session, how to count the band in. If you know how to which key you're singing in, which tempo you want to do it in, then they're going to make that session gig for you much much much
no,
more.
absolutely, and so for me, that's the original, the important theory for a singer is to understand that. Then
Yeah.
you can go on with it and take piano at the same time, always, of course,
Yeah.
but that's not going to work, without the listening and the having your charts and your key and going out and sitting in with it. Today, you can actually, when I was sitting and it wasn't, nobody was, you weren't giving any charts out. You just called a tune you knew they would know. And I always called one that I knew they could do. And I did call my key, but I knew they could transpose certain tunes. And you wait till 2 in the morning and they let you sit in. I used to hang out with Tony Scott had a place in the East Village in the 60s.
Hmm.
I had the courage. Jackie Bard was playing piano. Uh, um, um, God, I forget everybody's name. All these famous people, and I had the nerve to sit in. And I know I'm digressing, but sitting in is very
Yeah.
important. But you
Yeah.
know why I did it? I wasn't sitting in because I thought they were going to give me a gig. Believe
Hmm.
me, singers, and I wasn't sitting in to get famous. I was sitting in to find out how I was doing. You
Hmm.
don't know how you're doing until you get into a real life situation.
That's for sure.
Was I
That's for
able
sure.
to get up there and do a tune I knew and connect with it with that? That's scary with
Yeah,
these.
especially with musicians that you may not know if it's a
That's
session.
right. I knew they were great, but the point was it. And then I could tell how I was doing. Not bad. If they would ask me to do second tune, I knew I was. Oh, I knew I
Or
was okay. It was
yeah.
funny about teaching because when you teach, you start to get a little academic, and that's the. I once did and I want to continue doing this. By the way, maybe this will encourage me to do it. I once did workshops, and I called it tips on teaching.
Mm-hmm. Very
So
good.
in other
Very
words,
good.
that's why when I wrote this book, it's for teachers too. It's just ideas. I may come up with them, but take them, do it.
Yeah.
Everybody should do those things. It's not a how-to. It's what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
you said, well, are you an educator or are you a teacher? You know what I used to, and I still prefer, I'm a vocal jazz consultant. And
Oh, okay.
I like to, years ago, because I was like, teacher, you can't teach this. Just go out and listen to it, you know.
Yeah.
But of course, so I keep finding things for you to do that I did. In other words, we're teaching, it's the more experienced help the less experienced. So soon,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how it goes.
Absolutely.
I
That's
learned
the
from
way it
somebody.
goes.
I learned from more experience,
Yeah.
but I find these very tangible things to do. If I say learn a tune, I mean it. And I even have in my book the steps to learning it. How do you learn a tune?
Oh, fantastic.
How do you learn a tune? They go, oh, well, you pluck it out. You don't even know how to play piano. What do you listen to? Don't listen to Ella, because she might not sing the melody.
No,
So,
she probably won't.
and that's wonderful. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
she doesn't
That,
know it.
no, absolutely not.
So I started making these practice cassettes. And so I'm sending you the links. I think you'll find them
Oh,
very
thank
helpful.
you.
For
Yeah.
instance, then I have two of them that have songs. I sing the song with the correct melody, and then there's -1 after it. There's about 50.
Ah,
It's a great, but I say, here's how to learn the song. Listen to it over and over. And it's
okay.
very hard to do that.
When I do this, I would like to bring that in one or the other of my courses. I will always mention this is coming from Jay Clayton
Whatever. Yes.
so
You know,
that you know that because there's nothing worse than somebody saying this is mine. I wouldn't, I would be, you just don't do that.
whatever. Believe me, share it because, and instrumentalists say this. and it's just a coincidence, John Clayton, but John Clayton, who is a wonderful bass player, but we
Yeah.
taught together a little bit in Port Townsend in at a jazz camp. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember him giving a master class, and he said, learn it by ear. In other words, I can play piano. I can actually play the melody. But that's not when I really want to learn it. I either if it's an instrumental tune, I listen to an instrumentalist doing over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
If it's
Right.
otherwise, I even can, for instance, if it's a tune that I'm learning and I don't know anybody plays it, I'll play it the way it goes and listen to what I played, rather
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
pronouncing. So I say, learn by rote. You'll never forget it. But how are you going to do it? You got to listen to the right melody.
Right. You have to know
and
the
you
right
probably do
melody.
this, yeah. So in other words, I used to before iTunes, before iReal book, before the iReal app.
Yeah.
But first I would sing the tune as it goes, and then I make the -1. Now I don't have to, but I still do sometime if it's not.
So
on
you
the-
sing the real melody,
That's right.
and then you have the -1 where they can
After.
sing it. Right. This is really important because when I do tunes, I have to sing for the people that cannot read notes. I have to sing for them exactly. I learned this from Sheila Jordan and from Jazz in July. They said, always sing the melody the way it is written. And so people come to me and they're starting to sing Autumn Leaves, which is, it's not the tune.
They don't know that one either.
Right? We have to learn the melody the way it is written. So then I will sing it for them and record it for them so that they can learn the melody the way it was written.
Because educated, I love it. But when I teach with a lot of people, and years ago, actually, this might have been I did Jazz in July with her a few years, and there was Charles. Oh God, I'm going to forget his name. He was a trumpet player, but he would listen to the singers too, and I'll never forget. Here's what I say. I say, but why do I? In other words, if you sing a tune and you do change the melody, I can tell if you know the melody.
Absolutely.
By what you chose to do, I can tell if you know the melody, because I'm an educated listener.
Yeah.
And he used that term, and I like that term because it means that I've heard so much music. I know I don't even perform tunes I know, and I can tell from what you did that you don't know the original. And one time I was teaching, and I said, I just stopped her and I said, this is you're not doing the melody, in this one place. And she was sort of like, why do you have to learn it? So I played. No, but listen, I played the melody the way it goes, and she said, oh, that's nice. Hello. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes, it is nice. If you can do better, okay. And I change it, don't worry. But I can tell when you know it, or I can tell what singer you learned it from, because they have already changed it. Anyway, I think we agree on that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
number 2. Number 3 was organize your book. And again, I talk about giving, just make your own book. Each one has a number. It doesn't have to be alphabetical, because on your repertoire sheet, when you're planning a set, you go, oh, I want to do a swing tune. You look on your repertoire sheet, and it has a number already. You go, oh, that's number 6. And it's in the key of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The 4th thing is to practice with -1s. Then in my book, even on the CD, I tell you, some people don't know what a -1 is. Playback, people call them playbacks, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it just means comping that you can practice with that doesn't have the tune. Jamie Aebersold.
Yeah, I remember way back when I started out in jazz, I used to practice with Jamie Aebersold. Of course, the key was either too high or too low. And, but I did my best just to learn the tune, and then I played the melody on the piano, and I was able to learn the tunes.
That's right. And
Right.
the thing about Aebersold is, yes, if they're all too high. But the thing is, I use them to if you're going to practice scat or improv, it doesn't matter about the key so much. It's only when you're doing the melody. And so, yeah, I still use Aebersold. if
Yeah.
I have. I prefer if it's a tune that I use I reel, of course, in my workshops and everything. I reel, my God, I wish I had invented that. You see, I
Yeah.
should. See, I did two of those CDs. I would be rich by now if I had just continued to make those.
Well,
But that's not how.
maybe you can do something else now. You're still
No, I
young.
did
You're
something else. I perform instead. So that's what
yeah.
I decided. I never, but I think that's so. So you practice with these, and I know people who don't practice improvising. One of your questions was just scatting. When do you scat? Well, you don't have. You don't even have to. Abby Lincoln didn't scat.
Mhm.
Carmen did, but not as much.
No.
Billie Holiday didn't scat. It's okay, but if you think you want to, I just was
Mhm.
always inclined because I would hear Miles and I would hear melodies while they were blowing, and
Oh,
I would
you
hear
did
other
do
melodies.
that.
Yeah, I hear it. I hear it.
Yeah.
But then you got to work on it. And I
Yeah,
don't
but
think,
this is it. Some people want to come to me. I've even noticed that the questions that are coming into me for the 5-day challenge, because I said I'm going to start with the basics of improvisation on one of the days. It's just going to be teeny weeny. It's just a 5-day challenge, right? I'm just going to show them just the basics, like how to use a guideline, for example, right? And just which syllables, basic syllables can you use. But I've
well,
been
I
telling,
don't give syllables. I don't give syllables. My philosophy of that is do not write down syllables because they're not words and they don't have meaning. That we all have our own, but basically, I teach all the blues heads. And I say, try to tongue it like a trumpet player. Why? Because I think if you have too many syllables, you don't hear the new melody that you're improvising. You
uh-huh,
only, so be careful with it. So
yeah.
just practice singing.
Well, I just noticed that a lot of singers, when if they want to improvise, they don't have any idea how to phrase it at all, right? So I just give them a basic like ba ba doo ba dee ba doo ba da ba doo da. Just they start with that, and then they can all change it as they go. But if they're just going ba 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 ba,
No,
there's
no, no.
nothing.
I'm not saying I don't correct that, but I try to find. But the main thing is if you. That's why that I do scat labs. Do you know about
Mhm.
my scat labs?
No, I don't, but I'm really interested.
Okay, I'm going to tell you. And why do I call it a scat lab? Because singers don't practice. It's hard. You can't get a rhythm section all the time. And if you're working with the minus ones, you need a little help with it. But you can if you just work with minus ones. But when I say work with them, I don't mean one or two times. I mean
No.
50.
Yeah.
I mean, I once had a student, I taught at Cornish for 20 years in Seattle. I think that's where I was when you were in New York. But
Oh,
anytime you were, we never crossed because
no.
between 82 and 2002, I was in New York a lot, but I was living in Seattle. I had one
Oh.
singer, and I swear, she couldn't swing at first, but I swear, but what she did, and then she had two kids.
Hmm.
So all she could do when you have two kids, because I have two kids at home, was put that Aebersold on and scat just by ear, just do it. And she did it, and I heard the difference. So it was the
Wow.
repetition. In other words, nobody was there to help her, but she listened so much
Hmm.
to those the changes and just trying stuff, listening to horn players. It's tricky, but my scat labs are just that. And I was for years I've been doing them. I just do it, and I have a little repertoire that I call harmonically friendly tunes. So you
Hmm.
might as well start with those. I mean, and I it's like I call it an oral approach. So I have a 12-step
Hmm.
program. That's not in my book. And I'd be happy to share that with you sometime.
Oh,
The
you
idea
are
is
amazing.
what can I help you with this? But the main thing is show up.
Yeah.
We trade fours.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to take a whole solo. Maybe you never took a whole chorus. You will in my
Yeah.
scat lab.
Oh, that sounds great. Because a
And
lot of
then
singers, they get up there and you see the musicians are on stage and they're trading fours and they know where they are and they seem to know who's supposed to come in when. And a singer's standing there looking like she just doesn't know what's going on. She
that's
doesn't know when she's able to do a change four fours. Can I do it now, or do I have to wait, or do I have to ask, or it's really something. The musicians just do it the most, like it's the most normal thing in the whole world.
right. And they
Right.
respect it. And that's what I call nuts and bolts. That's one of the things that
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
even in a standard workshop. So 4-bar phrases, all jazz, most jazz tunes are written in 4-bar phrases. So what
Right.
is that? I used to take it for granted. So I explained, what's a 4-bar phrase? A 12-bar blues is just 3 4-bar phrases. You
Exactly.
see?
Great.
And so,
Yeah.
in other words, that to me is theory. So if you're going to go off and study, key signatures and scale, and you don't know what 4 bars is, you got the cart before the
Exactly.
horse. You got the
Yeah.
cart before the horse. So know what the basics are, and these workshops I do it. So then I do workshops that are free improv.
I'd love to take part in
I'm
one
going
of
to
your
give you an
workshops.
example. You know what, you could, because see, now I'm doing them on Zoom, and it's really tricky.
Oh, wow.
I'm telling you, it's really hard because you can't do. It's hard to do things in time. So I'm doing
Yeah.
mostly free things, or the singer has to be able to play a -1, like
Yeah.
and sing
Put
it.
it on in her computer. This is the way I do it, and I play it
I
on my
have to hear it.
computer,
Yeah,
and then you can show them how to do it, and then they have to do it with their
they're
recording.
-1.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tricky. The logistics is, but I've been doing it. I've just been experimenting with it because this is not going to go away. I'm not going to teach 6 or 8 or 10 singers in a little room for a very long time. That's the
No.
worst thing with the flu. You can't be singing, and that's
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting it together. I don't love it. I love it because I'm learning, but it's like, whoa! Wouldn't I rather
Yeah.
have you in the room?
Yeah, absolutely,
But
absolutely.
you
I'm
know
I'm
what?
teaching a course right now in my front room. I've got 4 singers coming. Actually, the course is like 12 people, but they've fallen off because of COVID. And these 4 are coming. Each is in one corner of my front room.
There
But
you go. Yeah.
yeah, doing it online is really a challenge.
It's a
Really, to be able
challenge.
to hear it, to feel it, and it is a challenge.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's
I
a
think
thing of the
it's worth it.
future.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's worth it
yeah.
because, especially like a lot of these free, I have one. If some singers, there may be some singers listening who actually know what I'm talking about when I
But
say
we've got
free.
a few more people on here.
410 too is a free structured improv, and you're going to read about that in the book. And it
Okay.
goes a long way, but it doesn't have pulse. See, it's
Mhm.
totally free. So
Oh,
there's a
okay.
few structures that I can do. I can also share the screen and play. Maybe I don't. You're gonna be very happy with my links.
Oh, I absolutely am going to be happy with your links.
No, I'm
I
telling you because one of the links, I made a CD, a practice CD with a series of vamps. In other words, you start from the easier things to harder things, soloing over a vamp. So there's not a lot of chord changes. There's a couple of modal ones, like for the John
mm-hmm.
Coltrane fans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I can play that, share the screen and play that, and then they can improvise with it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding out a lot of things. Only the bottom line is, you got to practice. As a matter of
Exactly.
fact, I have a one chapter in there, and I'm going to do a master class soon. I haven't ever done it on it. It's called Practice Time. What are you doing in there?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so
this is a topic that I talk a lot with my students. How do you practice? And I said, you just don't listen to the song and sing to it, and that's it. There's a logic to how to practice properly, so you can learn the song um, as
that's right.
quickly as possible and as thoroughly as possible. Right?
Thoroughly, and that's the key word, I think. So anyway, this practice time thing, and so in the book I just mentioned all the stuff. Well, you can't do all of that. I have trouble myself. I mean, I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't have to practice as much, as long as I'm working, singing out.
Yeah, right.
I'm
Um,
learning right on there. I'm not above anything. I have to work on learning the tunes. That takes a long time, and I do
yeah.
practice the scatting with I-real. But I'm just saying. But in the beginning, you got to have a nice thing. I think that one of my strengths as a teacher is to guide people to know what they're going to do in their next practice session. In other
Yeah.
words, before the end of the lesson, I say, okay, here, you're going to do this, this, and this. Because it's hard to decide. Sometimes I'm just walking around the room trying to, should I learn a tune? Should I do a tune I really know and then pretend I'm performing and work on that? Should I work on an improv? Should I look for a tune to learn? That can take weeks. Because I always say you should have a tune that you're burning to learn.
Yeah.
You're really burning, then you will. Anyway, should I
Mm-hmm.
listen to a bunch of versions? That's practice of the tune. So anyway, I'll do that sometime, especially now that, we're doing, I should do it online. But anyway, so I say, that was number 4, by the way, practice with minus ones. And I say the iReal Pro, I'm just learning about that. You can make it play an intro. You can just sing with the bass. There's a lot of ways to
Well,
work.
it's kind of cool. The iReal, for example, if I'm using a B flat saxophonist and an E flat an alto saxophonist, and I want the chords for that song, I don't have to sit down and transpose it, which I of course can, but it's just so easy. Like you just put the tune in iReal Pro, and you just say, okay, night and day in B flat, and for the saxophonist, I know what I have to do to put it in the right key for a B flat instrument or an E flat instrument, and then I can just print out the charts and say, here you go.
At least they have the chord. Yeah, that's a great idea. I hadn't even thought of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I use those
Learn
chords.
something every day.
Well, I use those chord sheets a lot. Now, sometimes the pianist is going to come by and say, "Oh, Judy, I don't like this change here." So we just might change that change, right? He's got his idea how the changes should go. But generally speaking, they're really, really helpful if you want to.
They're better than nothing.
Right. I used to pay a copywriter to write all my charts, to have the charts written up properly, because I was doing with them per hand and transposing them all. Like I've got 100 tunes that I've all transposed, per hand. And then you notice that, oh, I made a little mistake there. Ooh, and then you give it to a copywriter, and then you can, check it and see if it's all in order. But that's the way we used to do it, right? Now you can use this iReal Pro, and you can just, give the tune, give the key.
Well, but I still think that's excellent for the horns. But and again, it's better than nothing. But ultimately, you still want melody, harmony.
Yeah, there's no melody. There's no melody.
And if you, I will text you. I know people who will do that for not that much, and so people. I'm not going to do it now because in case I don't know if he wants, but there's somebody in D.C. and there's people in New York, and it's not that expensive. Just by email, say I'd like this and that key. But I want to speak just a second with this chart talk. I call it chart talk because it is very important.
Absolutely.
In a perfect world, I don't want anybody reading music.
No.
I'm sorry, but it isn't. We do so many. These guys have to. We don't do the original keys. For me, I'd rather work with somebody who's just not reading anything.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't do the original key often, and so it's like a gesture. And it's especially, of course, for a young player, you want to give him as much information as possible because that's how he's going to play for you. If you just give him a scratchy old thing, that's what he.
Exactly.
But if I work with somebody, for instance, like Kenny Barron or Stanley Cowell and all these great players, I know George Cables, I know they know the tune, but they really appreciate it. They're not going to be reading it a lot, but they haven't played it in a long time. It might be. And it's a gesture they really appreciate. They just look at that. They're cool.
Absolutely.
Now, they'd be cool otherwise. They'd just figure it out.
It just gives a little bit of security. Here's the tune, here's the key, and maybe you have some kind of different intro or an extra, or how do you want the ending, or do you just want to we're gonna go for it or whatever. It's just to have. You've got to have your chart.
It's just a gesture, and I've always said, like when you go to sit in, especially years ago. Now of course now all these players, all the instrumentalists, they have iReal. They got it on their phone, so they don't. If you call a tune,
exactly. So that's exactly how mine. And they bring their not their laptops, their iPads. Pull the tune up. The chords are there, ready to ramble. Right.
But years ago we didn't have that, and so you would call a tune, and I go, do you know My Foolish Heart in F? Yeah. Well, they're not going to tell you no necessarily because they think that, and then halfway through you're hearing this, or even
Yeah.
like a swing tune, and like after you sing it a couple of times, they get it because they're reharmonizing while you're singing.
Yeah.
Harold Mayburn, oh, he left us too. Wonderful piano player. I was teaching alongside him, and he gave me a good tip. He said, if you're sitting in and you're not sure if the piano player knows the tune, sing that melody the first. Don't be fooling around the first chorus. Sing that melody because he's harmonizing it. So if you're going to change, he won't find the right. I thought it was the greatest tip
Yeah.
because because then pretty soon you're off to the side. By that time they know it. But
Yeah.
I don't have to. I just want to say that the chart. Just get it together. We resist it. It's a pain in the neck. I have a lot of them if you need to. I save them in different keys and put them in, for my students. But now there's no excuse because we could at least give them the chord
Yeah.
changes. And as far as what they play, here's what I tell my guys. I said, look, I'm giving you these charts. I'm not married to any of these chord changes. I want your input. But I give it because if it's a tune they're not familiar with, there you have it. But I'd rather
Absolutely.
and I don't write intros on there either because I want their intro. You know,
Yeah.
I want if I'm not going to give Kenny Barron written out. Thank you very much. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
enough chart. That's enough chart talk. So anyway, I'll just so you'll get this list. After practice with minus ones, I say go to and or organize sessions and open mics. And in New York City, there's lots of them. By the
Yeah.
way,
You see, there's not a lot here. I do that with my
do you
students.
make them? Do you do them? A lot of students.
I have, after every course, I usually have a course that's 8 weeks. And after that, we have an open mic, and all of my other students that have also performed or also studied with me, then they all come over and they can take part and do a session. And some of the students, of course, resist getting up there because they're not too used to being on stage. I said, no, this is part of the course. You got to get up there, darling, and you are going to be wonderful. And once they get up on stage and they've performed, and everybody's going yay, and then they're feeling like they have just discovered Honolulu or something. They're feeling
Well, because
so
it's different. Practicing, and see, in other words, people also talk about stage fright, but it's like there's no shortcuts. But that's why in the beginning I started to set up workshops. I had private lessons. You get the thing together. You get your tunes together, and we help find keys. Then you take it to a workshop and try it out. Now you're singing for 5 or 6 people. You're singing for an audience. Your
yeah,
first audience is me. Private.
that's
That's
right.
can be a little. Then and then I set up what I used to call showcases. I call them vocal nights now. Now,
Oh, vocal nights. That's a nice name.
and what you just described is the fact that that's where the magic is. So there's going to be good stuff and bad stuff, but 90% of singing is confidence, and there's no way to get it than to have a little success in front of people. It's like, and you can practice for 10 years. If you don't get in front of people the first time you do,
Absolutely.
you won't even breathe. You just get nervous. So
Yeah.
anyway, they're lucky to have us to set that up. In the
Yeah.
old days, no, I just had to go sit in with.
Yeah.
God, and
And
I did.
overcome
But
your fear.
yes, it gives me a little confidence if someone actually heard it, and what if I
Yeah.
did. I was just saying, because I'm an improviser, but I love both. You see that, but I'm there's tunes, and that's why I teach like that. Soloing over changes, soloing free, two different things, but they transfer. It goes both ways. If you can't sing in time, then when you sing free, you're not going to be in time either. So I
Right.
like it
Right.
all. I like it all. Anyway,
Right.
anyway, after organizing, and so maybe some people have a loft they could play. Then I say, find here's a good one. Find instrumental collaborators. I know that it's good if you can find one instrumentalist to get together that
Absolutely.
wants to get together with you.
I tell all my students when in the beginning, they're not really far enough. Maybe some of the beginners, But once they've got things going, they've got some control over their voice, and they know how to count in and so on. I say, okay, time to find a pianist. Let's get out there and find a pianist, or maybe you can find a little trio somewhere. Put up an ad. You got to get out and start performing. And yeah, they love that. And I have
And
so many.
they will like you and respect you when you have a good book. So people come, a pile of music is not a good book. A list of your tunes alphabetically, that doesn't cut it. If you put it by feel, you'll find out what you need. And people like us can help you. Like if you have your repertoire sheet and you have 10 swing and 10 ballad or
Yeah.
whatever, otherwise, I, and you have the keys next to it, and I know you have a chart for it, I can help you. I analyze it. I'll go, well, you don't have any minor keys. Okay, so then I think of something, or I'll go, whoa, you got to what? I get 10 ballads and 4 swings. So then I have to come up. I do what I call a tune search.
Uh-huh.
I mean, so it's like a dresser. You get to know somebody, and sometimes I'm wrong. That happens too. I was thinking about choosing. I talk about choosing. How do you choose your tunes? Why do you do that song? I ask that. I ask that a lot. And yet you have to know what you're talking about. That's why I call Sing Your Story, the book. Even when you're singing without words, you got a story. It's an emotional story.
Absolutely.
Or not. You're not tapping in. I want you to tap in because everybody has a lot in there. We have our
Absolutely.
story.
We
Verbal or
all do.
nonverbal, yeah. And
Yeah.
but when you so I find things for people to do to evoke sounds or to and some like I was talking about choosing tunes. It's like sometimes you think, oh, I want to do that tune, and you learn it, and it doesn't fit. Like I've done that, and it'll sit in the closet. Like when you buy something, and it'll sit in the closet for 6 months because it's not right now. But later on, it might be. But know that,
Mhm.
and I can always tell. Like when people sing, I go, "That's great. You got a nice voice." Blah blah. Yeah. I said, "Go. Why do you sing that tune? What is it? The significance of that?" And
Mhm.
occasionally they don't get it. They don't. They didn't. They like the melody or they like this. They don't know what they're talking about. So I
Mhm.
have everybody, and I'm saying I'm not putting it. We all do this. Sing that song, rubato. Every song that you're learning, and what you can't sing rubato without knowing what you're talking about. You can sing swing and not even be there. You just singing the words that go with
Yeah.
the note, and
Right. 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 Right.
but
Right.
as soon as you sing rubato, you have to connect. So in other words, I'm just looking for little things like that, and when you're connecting. For
Yeah.
sure, the audience knows. They don't know that's why they like you. They don't know why they
Well,
like you.
that's also the that's what we want to do. Like I say to my singers, do you notice singers who sing? Their technique is wonderful, impeccable, but they're not touching on their hearts of their audience. And then comes another singer who may not be as virtuose in her technique, but she's really like people are starting to cry when they. I said, what do you think that is?
There it is. That's the more important to me. And so I always think you have your technique and you have your feelings and then you have your concept, which is more like style. But the main thing is to connect with the message. I just think
Yeah.
message is a big deal, you
Well,
know. And sometimes it helps. You just have to think about it. There are singers who are afraid to go deep. They're afraid to go. See, this is what I discover. I can tell by your repertoire. Sometimes a repertoire there's hardly anything in there that's really going to go in. It's like,
mhm.
oh yeah, so I find it too. I try to find a song that will make you get lost in that song. And
Yeah.
you're afraid to show your well, you are. It's scary, to show
Yeah.
your.
Right.
I used to say, oh, my guts are hanging out.
Well, I tell my students too,
Literally, I used to feel that way.
when you get up on stage, it's like you're naked, right? Like people can see who you are as soon as you open your mouth. And, that's scary to let be so vulnerable that people can see just about everything about you when you start to sing.
That's
And people
and
are afraid of that.
if you're comfortable, you might not be comfortable at first, but when you get comfortable with being who you are, that's
Yeah.
what To me, that's when it's working.
Absolutely.
Nobody's thinking about technique or anything. Somebody
No.
in the audience, whatever you're singing about, it could be them.
Yeah.
If
I
they're
think
not
that is the
listening,
most important thing.
oh my God.
I did another course on singing with confidence. And it's, finding out who am I really? What makes me the way I am? Because a lot of people are trying to hide all of the things that they can't do well, hide this, hide that. But, at some point you just have to say, okay, this is me, but this is also me. And this is also me, right? And to be able to stand up and be okay with that, and to realize, some things, okay, I'm got to work on it, and other things, just to accept yourself as a a
It
wonderful
will come. That's what I'm saying.
creation,
You
right?
don't. You do not make up your style. Style
No.
is just a fringe benefit to choosing songs that you connect with. Style comes of itself. Somebody said that, but I can't read. Might have been Dizzy Gillespie, or maybe it was Bill Evans. I collect wonderful quotes, and
Hmm.
it's like, uh,
I
and
got a couple of really good quotes from Dizzy
I
too.
just love.
He,
I just
he,
love.
he told me once, says, Judy, like when we were performing in Russia, he said, Judy, if you make a mistake, don't hold it too long. I thought that was pretty funny.
If you make a mistake, you mean,
Don't, yeah, if you make a mistake, of course, obviously, we make mistakes, don't we? He said, just don't hold it too long.
yeah, that's great. No, but he also said, because I'm very much into, I mean, I won't go into it here. I mean, but anybody who, works with me knows I have this little 12-step program, which it's nothing brand new because instrumentalists do it all the time. But one of the steps is space, leaving space. Like, that's a big
Yeah,
deal. We're afraid of
absolutely.
space. I
Yeah.
remember years ago, if I would hear myself back, that was one of the biggest criticisms I have to go, why did I why didn't I take more space? You're
Mhm.
scared, think
Yeah.
leave space. So he said, it's taken me all my life to learn what not to play. And I said,
Yeah.
that to me is like,
Yeah.
that's true whether you're doing a standard, whether you're improvising, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's
It's
in that,
probably the notes that you don't hear that are the most important ones.
well, the thing is, in that space, things come to you. Ideas come from nowhere. Or you hear what happened. See, if you keep talking, you don't hear what I just said because you hear it after. See, I go, you hear it after. What's ringing in your ear? You hear it after. You know what I mean? But if you go, you hear it after, and then you blah 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 blah. Anyway, I believe in it, and you just don't be afraid of it. And I have to tell myself sometimes, I'm like in a high profile kind of gig. Hey, I don't care. I get the jitters. Well, I don't know what you call it because it never goes away. My students are surprised. It never goes completely away. If it's this performing and making this music. It, it's not. I don't take it for granted at all. I don't take it for granted at all. But after you keep doing it, you might be a little bit, and then that first note
Mm,
connect. You
yeah.
know what I mean?
You know.
But in the space, don't be afraid. You just I did it for improvising because sometimes when you're improvising you start to think, in Sonny Rollins and everybody says you can't play and think at the same time.
No.
And everybody does it, so catch
No.
yourself. So I go,
Yeah.
well, if you're thinking, oh shoot, I shouldn't have taken this chorus. Oh, I don't have any. Oh, I don't have. Oh, I forgot. I thought I knew these. Now you're thinking. So I goes, first thing you do is take the horn out of your mouth. Leave. Don't be afraid of it. And then you try one of my things. And one of them is just start to sing melodic. One is rhythmic. One is like scaled down. Anyway, I'll tell you this sometime if you ever want to know. I'm doing it in my workshops.
You have just inspired me so much today, Jay. I just can't
Oh,
wait to
I'm so
start
glad.
practicing again. And I mean, it's not that I
Yeah.
don't practice, but sometimes, I think to myself, I really would love to, to put more time into my improvisation. And sometimes you just don't do it. And, sometimes now I've been practicing more piano, but you really inspired me. And I'm so excited to get back to doing some hardcore practicing.
All right. Well, I'll tell you something. If you don't get these links in the next day or two, you'll probably get it in the next hour. Uh, Nudge me because they're, in other words, what to do. Just play these links and learn these tunes or sing the tune over and over again, or the vamps improvise. In other words, that's my job. I want to give you tools um, to work on. How do you do it?
Amazing, amazing,
And I
amazing.
keep searching and I keep finding too, and it's thanks to teaching that I find it. In other words,
Yeah.
sometimes in the middle of a workshop, I discover something. Anything I
Well,
proposed, I did. Anyway, we're here. We're
yeah,
talking for a
we've
long
been on
time.
here for let me see. We
An hour and
started
a half
an
almost.
hour and a half. Oh my
I think
goodness.
that we need another chapter. But anyway,
I
to be
think we're
honest,
gonna have, yeah, we're gonna have to have another go at this because this is so interesting. We've got more people on the call. Jay Glasgow, hi, Jay and Judy, Svetlana Stone. Joyce says, great interview, so inspiring.
cool.
So, there's
I
not as
think
many.
that's our job as teachers too, is to catalyze, inspire, and then give very specific things to work on.
Yeah.
But it's
Well,
tailor made. It's
yeah.
tailor made. You know what I mean?
You know what? There are some teachers, like in Germany, people are here pretty intellectual, right? And I have always loved teaching. Like I don't teach just to say because I have to earn more money with it. It's my passion. I think it's actually my, how do you say in English? It's my mission. It's meine Berufung. It's my like I can hear something when somebody sings. I know quite almost immediately how I can help them. And I love to teach. And this is so exciting to talk to you about all of these things. And I'm getting so excited to be able to pass this on to my students because
That's
I think teaching, okay, some people say, oh, if you're not getting professional gigs, then teach it. Well, I don't think that way at all. When I see people like Rufus Reed, and he is a marvelous teacher. Oh my gosh. He really put me through hard times because he said, you got to learn the piano. And he said to me, he said, you got a good ear. You're like a submarine. You know where to go and you hear everything, but you got to learn the stuff now. And he really was very strict with me. But
that's
these people
great.
also love teaching. They're not just teaching for the heck of it because they need the money. And I've often never understood other musicians. Okay, they're great performers, but no, I'm not teaching. I don't have to teach. Like teaching is almost like something a negative, like you only do if you have to earn money or something. And I've never seen it that way. I've always loved it.
Well, I'll tell you one more last thing about teaching because I started teaching. People would ask me, I say this in the book, after gigs, they would say, do you teach? And I go, no, you can't teach this. Just go listen, because that's how I learned. And then I started to set up workshops and workshops in private, blah, blah, blah. And then for a long time I thought, I'm going to teach until, like I'm doing the teaching. I love it, but it's going to, and now I know, guess what? I'm never going to not teach.
You're a born teacher.
I'm just not. I don't, and it's like, I wish I could teach free, I mean, I still need the money, but I thought, oh, yes, at some point I'm just going to make a living performing. But no, teaching, you learn so
I've
much.
also thought that. I thought, okay, when I get to a certain age, then I can just, dedicate my life to performing. But you know what? I love teaching, and it's really part of my whole personality. So I will also continue to teach probably until the day I die, and I will perform till the day I die. And some people
That's
say,
right.
are you still
Why not?
singing? Are you still? I said, well, of course. Am I still breathing? Yeah, of course. I never stop singing. But one last thing I'd like to ask you, where are you performing in places in New York? Where can people hear you?
Well, nobody's performing anywhere. In
Oh
other words,
yeah, of course. I mean,
no, but I'll tell you what. I have the two new CDs, and of course, I did do the duo thing before this happened. We did a thing at Symphony Space in that little space, but at the end of May, we were going to do the second CD that's coming out in August. We were going to do it's Ed Neumeister and Fritz Power and me gig, but it's over. So there's no gig.
This is Fritz Power is a German guy, isn't he?
Austrian.
Austrian.
Right.
Because I
No,
knew his name.
I taught, you know, Sheila started the teaching in Austria many years ago.
Yeah, in Graz.
She invited me. We would alternate semesters, and Fritz Power was teaching there, and Ed Neumeister. Oh God, fantastic trombonist. And so I would say, let's just get together, the three of us, and we started to form a trio, and we recorded, thank God. And then Fritz Power died. He died suddenly. You just never know about that. I'm so glad we recorded. That's out, and I will be doing that because we're already on a mission about getting gigs as soon as we can get on an airplane.
Wow, you know what? You are such an inspiration to all of the singers who are going to be listening to you on here. Did you say you're going to be 89? Did I understand that?
No, I'm not 89, 79.
79. Okay.
Thank you.
That would be even more.
I'm a decade behind Sheila. You know,
Okay.
and look at her. She's going on, you know, so you can't, so we just do what you can do. Just
Yeah,
do
but look at what you're doing. You're doing all of this stuff on computer. Most women with 79 don't even know what a computer is, and you're doing all this stuff. You're getting out there. You're still teaching with 79. You're still performing, and I think actually we are blessed as singers because we never stop. We will never say, okay, now time to retire, right? But I still think that you are a great, great, great inspiration for all of the
Thank you
singers.
very much. I think that's a big part of teaching is to inspire and again be practical about what you want to work on. But inspiration, if you're motivated, you can do anything.
Absolutely.
Motivation
Oh,
and love. Just do it. Do something. And if you don't know what to do, call me. Email me. I'll tell you what to do. Oh
I
yeah.
think
Here's my thing. I have it on my desk. Can you read this?
wisdom is knowing what to do next. Very good. Very
Period.
good.
Next.
Period.
Are you going to
Period.
go eat? Are you going
Yeah.
to learn one tune? Or so that's a hard one sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But that's all you have to. Don't get in the future too much, and don't get in the past. Okay.
Yeah, right. The and the now. I guess I will just end the time. I can talk to you for hours on end. It's just been so amazing and so exciting. I've just lost track of time, but I thought that was a nice ending. What you just said about just
Know what
try.
to do next. If you don't know, don't do anything then till it comes.
Yeah,
It'll
right,
come. Thank you
right.
so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you
I,
are
I,
so welcome. I hope that I can have you on here again and
yeah.
even have more students on here.
Okay. All right.
All right. Take care and all the very best, health and happiness and
And
all the
thank you
best.
for doing this. It means a lot. You'll see. I love these things when you do the interviews. So thank you for having
Oh,
me. To be continued.
to be continued. Okay. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.
Bye.